Anyway, moving on. Why can't people handle accountability? This is something that's puzzled me quite a lot in my adult life, and we're going to get into why I think people can't handle accountability, and we're also going to get into what happens when you do take accountability. So people can't handle accountability when their ego cannot handle it. Being wrong feels like weakness. In reality, people are wrong a lot of the time. And it serves no purpose, and it entails no personal growth to continue this facade that I can never make any mistakes. So I find that very puzzling and fascinating. Fear of judgment makes people dodge responsibility. People are going to judge you no matter what you do. Any random person, given the circumstances of your situation and your actions, 100 different people are going to judge you 100 different ways. So it's inevitable that you will be judged at some point. So this is why I say it's fascinating that people seem to want to avoid this when it's impossible. Again, tied to the ego, accountability becomes attached to their identity. I failed equals I am a failure, for example, which obviously is not the case. It's illogical to think that way. Blaming others protects their own self-image. Again, related to weakness. If you admit fault, that means you're weak, right? Which is, of course, puerile and ridiculous way of thinking. Not related to ego necessarily, but I feel like these kind of people were never taught how to own up to their mistakes, to their bad behavior, and over time, the more that happens, the less likely it is that they're going to take accountability, and the more rigidly they're going to believe that they don't have to, because they've never been held accountable, really. And so as they get older, they assume that they're entitled to not own their mistakes. It is also a comfort thing, because accountability forces change, and change is effort, and effort is uncomfortable, and it's tiresome. Like I mentioned, it's very easy to slip into this habit because it's easy, because it's comfortable. But as I have said many, many times in life, it's better to be comfortable being uncomfortable than to just be numb to all of your surroundings and all of life's experiences. And I think a lot of these people grew up in environments where excuses were normal. A lot of this stuff stems from childhood, inside the family home, and maybe the parents were like this as well. And so it's just a learned behavior from your parents. That said, I don't think you can blame parents entirely for this, because someone who grows up eventually, becomes an adult, has to take accountability for their own mindset and their own decisions and behavior eventually. At some point it would behoove one to come to this conclusion, like, maybe I'm not right about everything all the time, and maybe my actions have negative consequences to others, and maybe it would improve the situation if I owned up to this. For other people's sake, if not my own. It's quite a selfish mindset to just block out anyone else's feelings about the things you do, regardless. And one big thing about people like this who struggle with taking accountability is they would rather look good, they would rather save face, than actually improve their behavior. That's more important. If everyone thinks that I'm perfect, then I am perfect, essentially. Which, again, of course, is obviously not true. But this is a sort of delusion, I believe, that so long as the world doesn't assume there's anything wrong with me, then everything is fine. And the irony of that is that no one is going to assume that. Everyone knows that everyone has problems. And just because people don't see problems doesn't mean they're not going to assume that they're there. No one is perfect. No one. So to have this delusion that if you pretend you're perfect, then everyone will think you are, is so self-defeating. Because no one believes that anyway. However, what I would assume is that deep down they know that fixing it means hard work, like I mentioned, and so, which is easier? Which is the simpler thing to do? Fix myself? Improve my behavior? Take some accountability for those around me? Or just carry on as I am with my head in the sand? I think we all know the answer to that. So what happens when you actually do take accountability for your actions? Well, you will gain control, ironically, instead of feeling stuck and stagnating. Because when you have control and you are willing to accept, to admit defeat or admit fault, that gives you so much more control than if you do the opposite. Because you're not pretending, you're not hiding from anything. You're holding your hands up and saying, okay, I screwed up. It's not the end of the world if you do. I mean, if it's something minor, if it's something interpersonal, it's really not the end of the world if you do. And if it's something major, something really serious, like a crime or some financial scam or something, you will be found out. So it doesn't make sense to do this in the first place. Another point is that problems will get solved faster. No, you're not wasting energy denying anything, because that's one layer of not solving a problem. And so if you just cut that out, it makes problems easier to get to the root of and solve. You know, denying it is just complicating things, ironically. Another thing is that you will build actual, real confidence. Because it takes a confident person, I think, to have the courage within themselves to just go, yeah, I messed up. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry this happened. Whatever. It takes balls to do that. It's another one of those things where the more you do it, the more free you become. And you don't have to keep analyzing and justifying and doing all of these unnecessary things when the person who's accusing you of not taking accountability knows and is telling you that you're not being accountable for your actions. They know that, you know that, just cut the bullshit. There's no need for it. In the end, people will trust you more. Think of it this way. You are in a supermarket and someone crashes into you, crashes their shopping cart into yours. What would be the most logical reaction for that person to have to that situation? I'm going to give you two, and you tell me which is the most socially acceptable one. They bash into you, and they go, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't see you there. Really sorry. And you go, no, it's fine, it's nothing, it doesn't matter, it's fine. Or they crash into you, and they go, why the hell did you do that? And you go, well, I didn't see you there. Well, you should have been looking where you were going. You know, it's irrational. And that's just a silly little example, but you can apply that to a lot of things. Which of those two people would you have more respect for? Which of those two people would you be more likely to trust in future? The person who shouted at you and deflected any responsibility, or the person who was like overly apologetic to the point where you have to say, no, it's okay, it's fine. You're going to trust the latter person, aren't you? And I would prefer for the world to perceive me as that latter person. Hey, guess what? I make mistakes. As most people do. But hey, I make mistakes, and I'm going to say, look, sorry I messed up. In general. If I don't think that I've messed up genuinely, then we can have a conversation about it. But I'm not going to say, what are you saying? I didn't do anything wrong, because I never do anything wrong. And I think most people would do that. That's why we live in a relatively stable society. But if everyone just pointed blame and didn't take accountability, that's not a society I'd want to live in. Another thing that will happen when you take accountability for your actions is you learn quicker because you actually face your mistakes. Instead of denying them, instead of palming them off and pretending they don't exist, you actually learn not just how to handle a mistake, but perhaps how not to repeat that mistake in future, which is a very important part of being a human being. If we continuously make the same mistakes or make mistakes without learning from them, our life is going to be a mess and our mental health is going to be in the toilet. It toughens you up to admit defeat. Because it's not comfortable, it's not easy, but the more uncomfortable you are in life, the easier life becomes. It's an ironic state of being a human, I guess. But if you never face your mistakes, how can you ever change? How can you ever grow? And how can you ever expect anyone else to expect you to grow? So in contrast to what I mentioned before, another thing that happens when you do take accountability is you have less stress, mental stress. To me, this is obvious, but maybe not to everyone. You don't have to do all this mental gymnastics to justify your actions, and you'll be arguing with people a lot less. No one likes arguing. Maybe some people like arguing, but I think most people don't. And so if you don't have to justify all of your actions all of the time with everyone you encounter, then you're going to be far less exhausted by the end of the day. And cumulatively, over years and years and years, I can't imagine that being a very healthy mindset. It's got to be exhausting and really mentally claustrophobic, actually, now that I think about it. And so facing accountability will make you progress consistently as a person. It will help you grow. It will help you to deal with future problems 5 years from now, because you've learned that taking accountability, you've learned how to take accountability, and therefore when it happens again in future, which, you know, we would probably prefer not to, but the more you do it, the less stressful doing that in future will become. It's like going to the gym. You get stronger with progressive overload. You know, if you just go to the gym and sit there and do nothing and sit on your phone for an hour 4 times a week, you're not really going to get stronger. And these kind of mental exercises, which is what they are realistically, have that same effect. Where if you take it on, if you smash the gym, quote unquote, in your mind, often it'll make you smarter, it'll make you stronger, it'll make you more resilient to life in general. And that can apply right now, next week, and like I said, 5 years down the road. And of course, this comes down to self-reflection, once again, self-awareness. It'll stop you from making the same dumb mistakes if you hold yourself accountable for the mistake you made. I'll say it again, we all make mistakes. But if we make mistakes, we need to be aware that they're mistakes and hold our hands up and go, okay, that was a mistake, I'm not going to do that again. And a lot of people don't do this for some reason. Because it's easier to go through life blindly following your nose and just reacting impulsively and, like I said, not taking accountability. So to summarize, a very simple contrast between these two mind states, between someone who does take accountability and someone who doesn't take accountability. Avoiding accountability will leave you stuck, frustrated, and blaming, and will prevent personal growth over time. And for those who take accountability, they will actually progress, they will get respect from people, and they will actually have more control in the long run. Because I think a lot of taking accountability is an illusion of control. Because if I'm not to blame, then I'm in control of this situation. I'm superior, right? Therefore in control. However, people will not respect that, and you will actually lose control generally over time. So any of the points that I've raised, if they've hit a nerve with you, then leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, etc. Anyway, moving on.